Hello, and welcome back to the Diogenes Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Willingham, and together we will chew our way through Wokistan in search of an honest man, or woman, or they, them. I'm just kidding. There's nothing honest about any of that. Remember, if you enjoy the content here on the Diogenes Podcast, please like and subscribe, and tell your friends to join the pack. Also, share your thoughts in the comments section, but do so respectfully. Slurs are not arguments, and trolling is not a meaningful contribution to discourse. Besides, that's my fucking job. Today, I would like to revisit an essay from my book, The Disasters of Woke, Manichaean Dreams in Words and Pictures. This is a timely examination of an ancient Greek myth, and the essay is entitled Three Gray Ones. I open with 3 quotes. Through an understanding of what the goddess was, we can better understand nature, and we can build our ideologies so it will be easier for us to live. Maria Gimbutas, Signs Out of Time. Perseus is the aggressor, not a hero, but a symbolic rapist standing astride the body of his victim, her bloodied head held high in victory. Medusa's closed eyes and lips speak volumes about both the history of women's oppression and the submersion of women's histories. Elizabeth Johnson, The Original Nasty Woman, published in The Atlantic, 2016. Pregnancy and childbirth cause serious and permanent changes to many women's bodies, require that a 1/4 inch be cut off a man's penis for every pregnancy he creates, and see how quick we are to force women to indelibly risk and chance their bodies. Jill Filipovic from a now-deleted tweet in 2019. At the time of this writing, the Supreme Court of the United States has recently overturned the 1973 landmark ruling in Roe v. Wade. With abortion rights under threat and amidst the ongoing hostilities around the Me Too movement and the intensifying insanity over definitions of sex and gender, the category of woman and the rights and privileges of those who occupy it are at once under new threat and overdetermined in their retaliations. As woke identitarianism continues to ravage the sense-making institutions of the culture, as well as filling the coffers of the ignoblest obligers in the media and entertainment industries, I want to undertake a small recuperation of wisdom from antiquity, a much-needed example of gratitude archaeology, before all that remains is an unintelligible palimpsest or a pile of ashes. The story of Perseus and the Gorgon's head is well known and dates from the 8th century BCE, with narrative roots in Mycenae from much earlier, and evolving forward through the interpretations of Hesiod, Aeschylus, Ovid, and many others. In this account of the archetypal hero's journey, Perseus is uniquely free of the hubris and tragic flaws so characteristic of other such figures in Greek mythology, his rash-seeming oath to claim Medusa's head being the only means to save his mother from rape and forced marriage. It also precipitates the fulfillment of his destiny as a founder of a heroic dynasty, which cannot be achieved without the direct intercession of the Stygian nymphs, the Graeae, and gifts from the gods themselves. Through luck, wit, grace, and grit, Perseus accomplishes his quest, propelled by filial love and the power of prophecy. At an historic moment of real peril, when the legacy of our democracy hangs in the balance, when we seem cut off from all reason, when we are transfixed by ever-shifting identities and their relayed reflections, when poisonous outrage lies coiled in every corner of the culture, I can think of no better story to invoke in describing the existential threat the woke pose to our civilization. However, before repairing to the classical past, let's consider a more current #DisruptTexts version of the myth, as exemplified in public art. Argentine-Italian artist Luciano Garbati's fan service sculpture, Medusa with the head of Perseus, was installed in 2020 directly across from the Manhattan Supreme Court, where his lissom avatar of girl power gazes balefully at the site where Harvey Weinstein and other abusers have been called to account. While ostensibly depicting the Gorgon as feminist avenger, the snakiest things about this castrating babe are her hips, inviting enough to leave any man rattled. Part Captain Marvel and part Kathy Griffin, this Medusa has the idealized look of an object that is looked at, which, while insufficiently arresting to turn me to stone, certainly seems intent on making me hard. Along with being available as an image on muscle shirts, this depiction, like all the other specious flips and swaps that abound now in art, media, and entertainment, this seems like nothing more than covert foreplay as spurious allyship. Well, say what you will about Godbody's intentions, at least his Medusa gives good head. Of course, it should be recalled that Perseus did not molest the maiden. He killed the monster to prevent his own mother's rape. And while the sword of social justice is swift and sharp, why not just use the Gorgon gaze to turn the man into the redundant lump he is already presumed to be? Perhaps this Medusa did not deign to look upon him, or merely wished to pursue a more phallocratic final solution. More on this later. The feminist deconstruction of the myth is the boilerplate cri de coeur of woman as righteous victim. Some, like archaeomythologist Maria Gimbutas, have postulated that Medusa's decapitation symbolizes nothing less than the eradication of ancient matriarchal societies by dominant men. While it is lamentably true that women have suffered historically, this symbol-minded reading is so ideologically serviceable that one is inclined to say, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. Of course, the spear shaker, along with kidnapping Clytemnestra for his own play, put those words in Gertrude's mouth, along with who knows what else, the nasty plagiarist. The tragedy never ends. There are several unexamined assumptions in the feminist interpretation of the myth of Perseus and the Gorgon's head. Medusa is not a monster embodying a primordial chaos, but is an icon for all women as historical and potential victims. Perseus is not an innocent, cast into the sea as an infant with his mother, an ally and defender of women, Danae, Andromeda, and a deposer of tyrants, Polydectes, Acrisius, but is an icon for all men as historical and potential abusers. There is always an absolute categorical distinction between innocent victim and sadistic oppressor, drawn neatly along lines of sex, race, and erotic preference. Essentializing is acceptable in strategic service to the marginal and subaltern. Men see women only as passive objects of lust, drudges for unrewarded labor, currency to trade for social status, emotional spectacles to ogle and mock, or threatening monsters to destroy, with no justifiable cause for any of this ever, while contributing little to the common good. Women would never regard men, or other women, as described above, with the cause for doing so always made explicit and remaining somehow immune to criticism, while doing all of the cultural dirty work for none of the reward and status. The feminist inversion bizarrely diminishes women by disallowing them ever to be sources of Chthonian chaos, destruction, or evil, which by definition are before and beyond sex and gender. And the feminist inversion reproduces the very dichotomy it purports to interrogate and transcend by insisting on a negative idealization of women as eternal victims of rapacious patriarchal abuse and exploitation. In Greek mythology, monsters are male and female, both and neither, good, evil, neutral, and unpredictable, just like the gods themselves. They are the victims of the gods' caprice, jealousy, rage, lust, folly, and even their mercy. They are victims of their own appetites and oversights, gifts misused, and simple misfortune. They are even hapless victims of divine friendship and love. This is precisely why myths resonate. They reveal the range of human experience, the sorrow and the pity, the exultations and agonies fitting and undeserved. The gods themselves are monsters. They are forces of insuperable cosmic will and insatiable appetite. We are, each and every one of us, god and monster, hero and hapless victim, man and woman, flesh and fire, radiance and dust. Human, all too human. All of us, not merely men, are both disturbed and fascinated by monstrosity. Disturbed because it destabilizes the familiar order of things, which says nothing about the legitimacy or permanence of such order. Fascinated because the peril of novel perception and experience is exciting and erotic, along with being potentially annihilating. It is the sublime monstrosity of our human condition as beings in a world of wonders, aware of our own destiny as fossils, that drives us to explore, to conquer, to reproduce, and ultimately to civilize. And then the need to recapitulate those primal terrors in art to remind ourselves of our humanity and the perils and pleasures it entails. Constructing an analysis of the myth solely from Medusa's experience is another example of single-feature identity politics robbing a complex story of nuance and resonance. Beyond the banal declaration that Medusa is a victim, there's nothing left to tell. No contemplation required. Avenging her wronged personhood is all that matters, and the target is clear. Again, this motivated righteousness reveals the obtuse uselessness of ideological interpretations of myths. They are not established as guidelines for ideal conduct in the material world, but as thought experiments that map the chaos of the human psyche within the safe and sacred precincts of story. Myths and stories exploring the theme of female monstrosity are, of course, in some way, about male fear in the face of female power, just as the reverse is true, because, taken to the extreme, all forces concentrated outside our own locus of control are potentially overpowering, therefore monstrous. We stand slack-jawed and frozen in the face of them, or we cut them down when we cannot flee, or we join with them. Camille Paglia suggests that the petrifying gaze of the Gorgon is a seduction by sudden hierarchic assertion, that the menacing female gaze signifies the omnipotence and ubiquity of creation. It is deep in our nature to fear the monstrous power within and without the human frame, within others and within ourselves. The hero or heroine faces the monstrous nature within, conquering it, being devoured by it, or reincorporating it as a positive force. And we conquer our fear partially by putting a face on it, and reclaim power by converting that face to a mask, our fear reflected outward as fearsome, warding off the threats to come. In part, Medusa embodies that fear of entwinement, of being both human and monster, agent of chaos and civilization, of blending with another or being reproduced as other. Medusa's own transformation from maiden to Gorgon to apotropaion offers an ontology of maturation and the civilizing process, from innocence to untamed emotion to rational guardianship of the social order. Paglia observes that men and monsters, never women, are the ones turned to stone by Medusa. For men, she is the seething embodiment of wild fertility. Her rape by Poseidon in the Temple of Athena is symbolic of the salty oceanic froth of lust washing over her, wiping away the chaste stasis of hallowed wisdom in a surging wave of sexual ecstasy. She is literally overcome with desire. Her subsequent punishment by Athena represents the knowledge that sexuality is bestial, terrifying, awesome, and transformative, and that men do indeed, with good reason, fear the fertility and generative lust of women, as they themselves are unmade in their own succumbing to it, while women mysteriously renew and reproduce from the selfsame process. Paglia states, quote, "The toothed vagina is no sexist hallucination. Every penis is made less in every vagina, just as mankind, male and female, is devoured by Mother Nature," end quote. So, sorry, Ms. Filipovic, Mother Nature already cuts us down to size, and we keep on coming. As for the, quote, "indelible risk and chance of pregnancy," end quote, I just can't conceive. Medusa as a maiden was overwhelmed by a divine power outside herself, an irresistible erotic force which led to a transformation, just as her subsequent death led to further transformations and generative issue in the forms of Chrysaor and Pegasus. The Greeks had two words to describe this process: ekstasis, ecstasy, and enthusiasmos, enthusiasm. These words didn't mean merely to be excited or turned on. They meant to be literally transported outside oneself, to fuse with a transcendent entity or experience. The idea that Medusa was literally thrown down and raped on the marble floor of the temple misses the point. She was taken in ecstasy by the irresistible divinity of desire itself. The fact that she is later punished by Athena for succumbing to unbridled emotion symbolizes the tension and conflict between reason and passion. Innocence is lost when virginity is sacrificed on the altar of sexual knowledge. At maturity, we are driven from the temenos, the sacred precinct, of our self-contained purity into the punishing precincts of the social world, where we must assume responsibility for controlling and harnessing the forces within ourselves, or at least put on a convincing mask. From the consubstantiality of the mother's body to the tenuous longing for the other's body to tendered membership in the body politic. Medusa is the mediator between the oceanic power of Poseidon's lust and the cool marmoreal perfection of Athena's wisdom. The ravishing in the temple, in fact, is Poseidon's penetration of Athena by proxy. The only manner in which desire could enter into congress with the goddess of war and wisdom is through love, understood here as lust or sexual consummation. Diadema explains to baffled Socrates that, quote, love's function is giving birth in beauty in both body and mind, end quote. And as lust is the frenzied Dionysian twin of noble love, so the apotropaion, the arrestingly hideous visage, is an aspect of beauty itself, not its absence or its opposite. Rilke expresses this memorably in the first elegy, quote, for the beautiful is but the beginning of the terrible, which we are still just able to endure, and we are awed so because it serenely disdains to destroy us. Each single angel is terrible, end quote. So each single monster must be beautiful. They are entwined. Medusa's gaze does not destroy. Rather, it preserves forever the last astonished expression of those who encounter her unassimilable complexity. Maiden, God-tempting in her beauty, and hideous monster. Infinitely compelling object of desire and unreachable force of nature. Daughter and sister to immortals and mortal monster. Ravishing and ravenous feminine phallus. Like the fetishist, the victim of Medusa's gaze is transfixed and held captive by the first thing seen in the absence of the last thing fully felt. Medusa's gaze does not destroy, it preserves forever in a horrible eternity of suspended action, revealing that being of the body and the mind is birthed by love in time. A thing is not beautiful because it lasts. Being is meaningful because it is brief and because it yields ultimately to endless transformation. The Greek myths abound with stories of the confinement of immortality for those not born to it, and, often as not, the gods are hardly aspirational in their actions. The gods act on and through mortals to change the world, as ultimately we do through our own offspring. Medusa is both gods, Poseidon and Athena, or rather, both gods are aspects of Medusa herself. Medusa is a Chthonian figure of both fertility and fear. Again, on the symbolic level, she is not a wronged woman punished for her own rape by a vindictive authority, then later murdered by a toxic male. She represents and literally embodies a contradiction that must be overcome to achieve the balance between reason and emotion, monstrosity and heroic purpose, chastity and fertility. Medusa, as maiden, as monster, is both agent of and occasion for action, transformed by desire into a transforming force of nature. What does Medusa do? She makes men hard. To be turned to stone is to become monumental, timeless, immortal in the shock of ecstasy, wisdom, and conquest. Her existence sacralizes sworn oaths. It is written in stone. Transformed, Medusa is hermaphroditic and auto-reproductive. Her wings are infolding, the darting serpents of her hair penetrative. Like a serpent, she slithers through the undergrowth of experience and, bat-like, flies noiselessly above the tangled nests of divine and human contradictions. Perseus gifts Medusa's head to Athena upon completion of his quest. Here, he is a courier who delivers lust and the monstrosity of dark emotion to the goddess of wisdom herself, restoring unity by risking proximity to the female as a bearer of gifts and as a petrifying avatar of desire. Like his half-brother Hermes, Perseus traffics between the worlds of men, gods, and monsters. Ultimately, Athena wears the head of Medusa on her mantle, the aegis, and a patrapaion that petrifies foes in her aspect as war goddess. Athena literally takes Medusa to her breast, reabsorbs her into her own divinity as an aspect of sexual display which beguiles and terrifies while leaving her autonomy and integrity intact. Her sexuality, like her vindictive wrath, is then an aspect which she can don or remove at will as need requires. Perseus's facilitation of this sexed reconciliation of stoic wisdom and ferocious emotion reveals the mutual dependency of women and men as cause and completion of each other and the species in sexual and civilizing union. Medusa's disfigurement is the story of a goddess punishing a woman not for her sexuality, not for being violated, but for the rape occurring within the space of wisdom, the temple of Athena itself. No woman is to blame for her rape, but there is a way in which vulnerability to misfortune is exactly what wisdom is meant to prevent, a foundational principle of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics also understood that, wise as we may become, we are still subject to and must accept the vagaries of fate, which may change us, and not always for the better. Athena later helps Perseus to prevent his mother, who takes refuge in a temple, from suffering eventual rape at the hands of a tyrant, a kind of mending of the feminine within the myth. Wisdom can force us to confront with horror what we have become, but it can also preserve us from harm. Another interpretation is that the myth's explication of Medusa's ordeal can be seen as a reproach against the harsh consequence of social rules imposed upon the fallen woman. Perseus could be seen as rescuing Medusa, liberating her head from her corrupted body, elevating her mind, and allowing her gaze to continue to work in the world, turning to stone the men and monsters who would prey upon women, the phallic sea serpent sent to devour Andromeda, hard-hearted Polydectes bent on the rape of his mother Danae. Euripides, in his play Ion, describes Medusa's blood as a gift with the power to restore life. In this sense, Perseus becomes entwined with Medusa, a partner not subject to her gaze, but collaborating with it in service to virtue. Medusa, in fact, through Perseus's desire to claim her head, not her sex, gains the body of the hero, using it to take her ultimate place on the aegis of Athena. This is not rape and murder, but a teleology in which Medusa progresses from chaste maiden to vicious monster to sagacious goddess, child, adolescent, adult. Viewed this way, Medusa's is the heroic journey, and Perseus is merely a psychopompos, a guide, bearing witness to and facilitating her transformation. The feminist revision tellingly fails to account for Perseus relying on the guidance of women, uniquely positioned to assist his quest to become a man. The Delphic oracle, Athena, the nymphs, the Graeae, all are bearers of wisdom, gifts, and secret knowledge, as is Medusa herself. The feminist critique ignores Perseus's dedicated affection and defense of his mother's safety, his mercy to Atlas in turning him to stone to alleviate the Titan's burden of carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, a punishment received, it bears mentioning, for challenging the authority of a patriarchal order. The feminist revision ignores Perseus's rescue of Andromeda, haplessly being sacrificed to atone for her mother's vanity. Instead, the hero is damned as slaughterer and as savior, cast out for receiving gifts and bestowing mercies, condemned for depending upon women's greater agency and for defending them. Perseus could not succeed without the support and assistance of women. Yet, true to form, contemporary feminists see this not as collaboration and common cause, but as women obligingly enabling the achievements of oppressive and ungrateful men. Apparently, the crooked road to aught is littered with isms. Just as Medusa is viewed reductively as the wronged woman, so Perseus is reduced to the trope of the abusive male. Yet the name Medusa means the ruling one, and Perseus means avenger. Over whom does Medusa rule? Men. Whom does Perseus avenge? Women. Medusa the monster is seen as the chaotic encroachment of untamed nature on the social order, transforming to standing ruins the world of men. Perseus embodies the civilizing impulse to defend, preserve, and secure future order through commitment to love and justice. But this is a false dichotomy, a transitional antinomy resolved through a carefully structured exchange of gazes and forms, gifts and identities. Perseus clasping Medusa's head is literally in the grip of nature. The Gorgon's petrifying stare literally makes men monumental. The purposes of hero and monster are reflected in each other, overcoming an apparent binocular rivalry through a common transformational ontology. The gifts lent Perseus for his quest are psychologically significant. The sickle of Zeus, receiving the phallic power of the father. The reflective shield of Athena. Wisdom reveals the horror of existence, viewable only through its representations, a prophylactic fragmentation of experience rather than an annihilating wholeness. Hades' helm of invisibility, death as erasure of subjectivity. His winged sandals, like Hermes, the messenger of the gods, the impossible movement of desire, the flight of imagination, and the power to move between worlds. And the nymph's magical invaginated pouch, which accommodates any object placed within it. Perseus must have knowledge and experience of the feminine in order to incorporate Medusa and facilitate transformation. The gifts of the gods are charged with meaning and prepare the hero for entry into the representational order of culture. They initiate him into the mysteries of sex and death and reveal the necessity of integrating disparate parts of self and other into a unified experience as a precondition for individual and cultural maturity. Most importantly, the myth elaborates a process of perception as the means to achieving the hero's quest. To locate the Gorgons, Perseus must seek the three gray ones, the gray eye, to intercept their mechanism of sight, to see through their shared single eye, just as an artist occupies the threshold of the visible, to focus perception, gather hidden information, and to reveal the truths of observation, imagination, and experience. Although he remains hidden from them, Perseus snatching the eye of the gray eye is man's wish to see and be seen, that is, acknowledged and comprehended, to take his place within the recognizable structure of the world. Perseus's wish is to catch the eye of the three gray ones, who share wisdom, insight. Yet he also must beware the evil eye of their cousins, the Gorgons. He must remain out of sight, out of mind. Knowledge entails belonging to the world, a fusion with experience, also being overlooked as a potential target for misfortune. Malice is a motivated misrecognition, the faculty of monsters, and leads to isolation and non-existence. Medusa can only be viewed reversed in the reflection of wisdom's shield, emphasizing the representational nature of the encounter. Death can be overcome, but only symbolically in the space of the imagination, where recognition of fate becomes acceptance of fate. And acceptance is endurance beyond material existence, the reflections of art reproducing themselves through a series of unending looks. Perseus must take a look in the mirror, to evaluate himself, to see the monster and death as aspects of self and life before they can be conquered. Finally, when the image is incorporated in his psyche, Perseus sees the light by integrating the shadow. He achieves the power to face the remaining challenges in his quest, to become a fully aware agent of his own destiny, a man at last. The gray eye thus reveal an apprehension of reality as a gestalt. Multiple vantages must be incorporated and unified as a shared and coherent perception to achieve understanding and a complete engagement with the world. Otherwise, there are only fractured and irreconcilable standpoints, a hall of mirrors that contains its exits within itself. Cultural solipsism. Contra Garbati and other hustlers of power and identity, Medusa does not stand for woman any more than a hero must be male. Medusa is manifestly sexually polymorphous and represents the chthonic erotics of the discovery and the overcoming of monstrous obstacles on the road to maturity. Severing the consubstantiality of the mother and infant, threats to and of parental emotional attachment, fledging the nest, the perils and pleasures of sex, responsibility for mastering one's life and owning one's destiny and legacy, which includes the unintended consequences of experience and ultimately death. Those who fail of the quest are doomed to an arrested development, a kind of living ruin. Those who succeed separate ego from id, lucid mind from mere bodily spasm, and achieve the wisdom to negotiate desire and identity within a social precinct that stabilizes what is, in fact, an ongoing process of coextensive stability and transformation shared with other people. These are lessons and labors ideologues would do well to remember, to seek out and trust the sight of those whose visions of the world are not black and white, but nuanced enough to read the shades of gray. Strong visions, loosely held, that are not imposed monstrously, but meant to be shared for the clarity of all. Fear and monarchy pair nicely, but democracy means you have to work with people you may not like, but you must still believe you are equals. And a fearful people never trust the other side. Martha Nussbaum, The Monarchy of Fear. For magic is fueled by love, not hate. Hate wields scissors only and is impotent to weave the threads of sympathy whereby the mind and spirit do move matter. John Updike, The Witches of Eastwick. I'm Chris. Thanks for joining me.